We are now going to continue in the book of Revelations, another totally misunderstood chapter, chapter 6, where those that, as it says in Matthew, have entered the wide gate and went down the wide road to destruction. Almost all teachers and prophecy teachers and pastors teach from the wide gate and the wide way to destruction. Saints, we went through the narrow gate, which was Christ himself, and we've stayed on the narrow way, which is Christ himself. And as you saw in chapter 4 and 5, that the Father, another wonderful revelation, had this book on his throne, and that book was sealed up, and that the sun rose. The Lamb of God rose up into heaven, that freshly slain lamb. In the time between, he told Mary, "Don't touch me," and he told his disciples to put their hands in his side to feel him, to touch him. That, in the last chapter, chapter 5, was a beautiful revelation of that time that the Lord had showed John. And we go on now to chapter 6, another totally misunderstood chapter. Because now they'll certainly say, "John, this is certainly the tribulation." No, it's not. It touches upon the tribulation. It covers the tribulation, but it has nothing to do directly with the tribulation. Once again, they've been wrong. You might ask me, how do you know these things? I'm a nobody. If there's anything God showed me, that he has done this because I am very foolish, and he done this to confound the wise. One day I was just asking God, I'd like to understand the book of Revelations. It seems nobody does. It's so confusing. And his spirit fell upon me. And when I read the beginning of the first book, the revelation of Jesus Christ, I went in that door, and this book opened to me in a way I could never know. I am not smarter. I am not better. I am not more righteous. I just had a revelation of Jesus Christ, as Paul would say. And in chapter 6, verse 1, "And I saw when the Lamb broke one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying as with a loud voice of thunder, 'Come, John, come here.' The Lamb breaks one of the seals." Remember, that scroll is sealed up because of the debt against the names that are within it. And the sun rose up, having paid the price of that debt. He is now breaking these seals. These seals cover the entire church age, from the day of his resurrection until the very end of the tribulation. These seals cover everybody chosen, predestined by the Father. These seals cover that entire time of the church age. And these 4 living creatures announce the first 4 seals. We'll go over in this message the first 4 seals. And the living creatures, as I told you, they stand between God and man. They stand between heaven and earth. And they are calling John to these messages. And they come for the first 4 because it's in between heaven and earth, God and man. They stand in that place, and they bring John to that place to show him these things that will be the purpose of God in these seals, in this book, in this Lamb, and his work. And they said, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him. And he went out conquering and to conquer. Everybody's telling you that this is Jesus. You will never find in the Bible a reference, a vision, a symbol of the Son of the living God, of God himself, in this sense, and he who sat on it. This is not the Lord. And the horse is not what they think. I asked God to show me further about the horse, because all I had is what he showed me there in Revelations. And recently he took me and opened up Zechariah 1:8 through 11. And Zechariah is having this vision. And I saw at night, and behold, a man was riding on a red horse. And he was standing among the myrtle trees which were in the ravine, with red, sorrel, and white horses behind him. Then I said, My Lord, what are these? And the angel who was speaking with me said to me, I will show you what these are. And the man who was standing among the myrtle trees with the horses answered and said, These are those whom the Lord has sent to patrol the earth. And that's what we have in the first seal. Throughout the church age, these seals are going to show the conditions of the earth and the things that God is allowing as the church age goes on. The church expected the Lord to come and rule and reign with us in power almost immediately, in their lifetime, certainly. And what he's showing here, what he's telling John, there's going to be thousands of years before that happens. Let them know this white horse is God's authority. Paul said that all authority, all rule is set up by God. We're to obey the governments. We're to do what they tell us because he has set up those governments. At times they're tyrannical. At times they're evil. At times they cause trouble. But in the end, they're fulfilling God's purpose. Man ain't running across the earth, destroying it out of free will. God has control of things. And as you saw in Zechariah, in the end it says, and the earth is peaceful and quiet. In the end, we are better off with this rule and reign under God's authority, because you take God's authority away with these human beings, and the earth will turn into chaos. Everybody, imagine a riot in an inner city for something that's just drove everybody mad. The whole earth will be like that without these men with God's authority ruling and reigning upon the earth. And a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering to conquer. God sets these kings up. God sets that power up. God sets that authority up, and they do go out and conquering and to conquer. It's for God's purpose as he is getting his will done. The earth prepared for what he's doing. So the church expected him to come back right away. But he is saying, and to rule and reign, but he is saying, no, man will rule and reign for a considerable amount of time. And when he broke the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, the second seal, the second creature. And another, a red horse went out, and to him who sat on it, man, it was granted to take peace from the earth, and that men should slay one another, and a great sword was given to him. As God allows these men to rule and reign and to keep his purpose upon earth, men do fight with men. But it's for God's outcome in the end. God's not losing here. God has who he wants in power, where he wants them in power. It's for his purpose. And that throughout the church age, the Christians thought that the Lord would come and bring peace to the earth, and that we'd all be peaceful and living in his kingdom. And he's telling them that I have men in authority, and they will go out conquering to conquer, and they will take peace from the earth, and that they'll slay one another, and a great sword is given to them to wage war. And in verse 5, and when he broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature saying, Come. And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales. And I heard, as it were, a voice from the center of the four living creatures. This comes between God and man, between heaven and earth. This voice coming from the center saying, four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. This is a very high price to pay for those things. This shows famines, shortages, severe shortages. The church wanted and expected immediately to him to come back, and we'd live in a land of milk and honey, that we'd eat of the tree of life, that we'd never want, we'd never go hungry. He's saying to the saints, Thousands of years are going to take place where there's going to be famines. There's going to be shortages like you see now. Sometimes they're worse, sometimes they're better. But as all these things are said there, what else did he say in Mark 13, 7 and 8? In these seals we've already seen broken. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, and we do, and we are now, and we have through the history of the church, do not be frightened. Those things must take place. They're destined by God. But that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation. We've had one kingdom after another. We've had world wars. This is what he's talking about in the seals. That's what he's showing us in the seals. And kingdom will be against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will also be famines, which we just read about. These things are merely the beginning of birth pains. This goes clear back to the beginning of the church age. It has nothing to do with the tribulation. We have lived this, and the saints have wondered, where is he for generation after generation? And he's saying, that is not the end. These things is what God has allowed by God's authority. So don't think it's come yet. Don't think these things are unusual. And he says at the end of verse 6, and do not harm the oil and the wine. Do not harm the oil and the wine. Oil and wine back in those days were symbols of luxury. The rich had them. They had them in abundance. The wine for the partying and the gayness. As the world is going on in these shortages and wars, even in wars, the rich people are always partying and drinking and having fun. The rich always have their riches. The same it is now. That's what he's saying there. And when he broke the fourth seal, I heard the fourth living, and when he broke the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, come, the last of the living creatures. And I looked, and behold, an ashen horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death, and Hades was following him. Death and the grave. And authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by the wild beast of the earth. Throughout the church age, we were told he's coming, and we will have eternal life, that we will not die, that he'll put an end to death in the grave. And that's what the saints were waiting for, desperately, even the apostles, thousands of years ago. And now he's telling John, you're all passing on. We have to let them know that the earth is going to go on as it has. And they will, the saints still will die, and they will be buried. And authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth. God doesn't let death and destruction and pestilence and shortages and wars envelop the entire earth. It would be chaos. Man would be gone. But he keeps it restricted to about a fourth of the earth at a time, or less, or a little more. But over a fourth of the earth, they had authority to bring death and the grave, and to kill with the sword, and with famine, and pestilence, and by the wild beast of the earth. We got very few wild beasts left on the earth anymore, but in the early church age, people were commonly killed by animals. As settlers spread out across the earth, hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 years ago, wild animals was a big problem. And Christians would say, you said, Lord, you said, the lion would sleep with the lamb. They're not doing that. And not only that, they're killing us. He's saying that even that would go on throughout the entire church age. Don't be deceived. Don't be let down. And you can see now, I hope, that this has nothing to do directly with the tribulation. But these things will go on in the tribulation and will be magnified in the tribulation. But so far, we're not there yet. The second half of this chapter, chapter 6, we will cover in the next message.